So I thought I'd go on and put together this little presentation for Scott and for anybody in the group that might want to watch it. I don't think it's going to be more than 15 minutes, but recently a stalwart of the miniatures gaming scene here in Minneapolis, and this, by the way, would have been at the birth of what we consider to be Dungeons and Dragons. This is a gentleman who gamed regularly with Dave Arneson, was a part of that whole scene, and managed. I think he actually owned and managed, but I know that he managed the big miniature shop up here called 110 Soldier. That was a big deal. At any rate, so this guy who's I don't know exactly how to say it. Was a mentor to so many people who, even to this day, are playing at the Source Monday nights for about I don't know 30, 40 years, whatever it's been, and I kind of gave that up to game with everybody on Monday nights. Not because I wasn't having fun, but because I really, really disliked one of the guys there. Disliked to the point where I was concerned I was gonna do that I was gonna get physical with him, because it's the kind of guy who would sit there and somebody would complain about, say, Steve Bannon, something that he'd done lately, and the guy would just be like, "Oh, good Marine, yeah, excellent Marine." I mean, it isn't that he believed any of that shit. It's that he just loved to antagonize people, own the libtards, all that kind of thing. And of course, I can't get along with people who do that. I just can't. I mean, it's not a politic thing. It's the fact that he's a complete fucking asshole thing. So anyway, I stopped going to that. But as I said, he died a couple of weeks ago. Actually, right before I went to Gen Con. So it took a while to go in and organize this thing. But essentially, he was really concerned about his miniatures collection just being thrown into a dumpster. And I was like, well, okay. About 6 other guys and we're going ahead and go down there. And obviously, I wasn't prepared for anything. I wasn't prepared for what was down there. I'm still pretty shocked, quite frankly. For a start, it's an entire basement with 4 or 5 rooms, interconnected. And when I say it was stuffed, I mean the military manuals that were in there. I'm just talking about military manuals that have been collected for like the past 100 years. They were thrown out because there's only probably only 1,000 people in the U.S. that would have a use for that, and she had no way of getting a hold of them. But if you've ever seen one of those dumpsters that is about 2 cars long and about 5 feet high, I mean, these are huge dumpsters. That thing was overflowing in the yard, just overflowing. And that gave us the ability to walk around down there, but still feel phenomenally cramped. I mean, I'm talking a huge, huge library of books. And I mean, honestly, if I said 15,000 minis that have been painted over the years, I'm probably underestimating it. I mean, these minis ended up going to about, 30, 40, 50 people who would come and get them in waves. And they kind of held like I mean, not necessarily an auction, but you know what I mean. Everybody would come by, oh, I want that one, etc., so forth. At any rate, lots of treasures in there people went on ahead and turned over to me. And I made sure, well, you sure you don't want this? Are you sure this wouldn't be better for you? But everybody was kind of like, no, we want you to go ahead and have these things, Jim. And so, I waited to really go on ahead and look at stuff until after the funeral on Friday, which was far more moving and stressful than I had any idea it was going to be. Because although I've marched in military parades. I've stood at attention for an hour or more in military parades. And I've heard rifles at military parades. I was not prepared for an honor guard scenario. this funeral where, in addition to civilians, there's dress uniform members of the ceremony and everything like that. And those they warn you that the guns are going to be really loud. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, I've heard rifles before. No, it just shakes you. Just wow. And taps and everything like that. It's extraordinary. And in my case, I hadn't stood at attention and saluted for, oh my God, it's been like 38 years or something like that. So, which is what they asked us to do. If you served, they want you to go on ahead and do that. So I did. Along with, well, as a lot of people know, for some reason, role-playing and miniature wargaming in particular tends to attract ex-military. So well over half of the 30 people that were there, in addition, and then there was also the family, were saluting. Many of these guys, not that far removed from a walker. So, boy, I figured if I ended up falling out or wavering or shaking or something like that, I was going to feel real stupid. But, luckily I got through it. Anyway, that's that story. I figure it's about time to go ahead and go through some of these things. I'm damn sure that Scott is going to be interested. And, perhaps a couple others of you will as well. Obviously, I'm just going to quickly go through this box. Because, it seems like the best way to do it. There are a lot of things where I'm just like, I have no idea what this is. Let's see if I can see what's the best way to... Yeah. So what we've got here is a city-state warfare, and this is a Judges Guild product. And my little amount of research that I was able to do tells me that this is from 1982, and this is an example of things that would have had an incredibly limited print run, as indeed a lot of the stuff here that I have does. And as you can see, oh wow, okay, this is miniatures, or not miniatures, but battle rules, and they would have chits in them because of course they're not going to be able to afford minis, for something like that. This is not printed at the birth of wargaming. That was much more an H.G. Wells kind of thing, but certainly printed at the beginning of role-playing adjacent or role-playing accessories to it to go ahead and attract that audience as well. So that's probably, in my opinion, the least sexy thing there. It's the one that's most likely to... Yeah, I don't know what Judges Guild is. Judges Guild is, Jim. That makes sense. So, here, let's just break this out now. Yeah, Warhammer Fantasy Battles. Very obviously the English box set. I remember it well. And of course, the thing is that this guy, any role-playing stuff he had, pretty much always fantasy battle adjacent or very much a part of. So like, so not a whole lot of things that would be straight role-playing. I mean, this guy was I won't go into a huge amount of detail, but basically people from across the country, probably the world actually, would contact him and say, hey, I need a field manual for Arctic survival that the Marine Corps printed, but hey, it's got to be, the 1938 edition. And he was your man. So, yeah, exactly so. So you can imagine just how much stuff he had that was related to straight miniatures gaming that wasn't of interest to me. But of course, something like this is. And I'll probably end up, finding a home for it for someone who can really appreciate it. I think there's very little of it that I'm going to keep. Of course, this was published in, I want to say, 1984. Absolutely, the 1984 box set. I do not think it's the original Warhammer, because stored inside the box is this stuff, which is tabletop battles, forces of fantasy. They seem like expansion stuff to me. Although these seem to have come out a year before the Games Workshop stuff, so can't really go into the providence of any of that, because not really my area of knowledge. I think I've played Warhammer just a couple of points in my life, but this is pretty nifty. And to further go into that, Games Workshop used to publish these things. The 3rd edition of Call of Cthulhu is probably one of my favorite and most treasured possessions, because it was far too expensive to ship Call of Cthulhu into the country. So they would go on ahead and they would make these licensed printings. And in the case of the 3rd edition, it contained the main box set, the first Cthulhu supplement, and 16 color plates, Cthulhu-related art from the pages of White Dwarf. And so it's sought after, if you know what I mean. For Call of Cthulhu collectors. I actually have 2, but one that's in pretty lousy condition, but another that's in pretty good condition. I had never seen this, but it's very obviously in the same vein, where it's all these collected rules for, I guess the only difference is you could have bought the original stuff of this, because it was an English game, but then again, maybe not, because this one is dated 1980, I believe 1984, but also it has an ISBN number, which tends to suggest it's American. Again, that would take somebody who was way more into Warhammer than I am to figure any of that out. Then Dungeons and Dragons, but I'll get to the main thing later. But it's just a beautifully conditioned DM's guide, and it is what I'm looking for, the revised edition from December 1979. So I imagine it would have the errata included. It's probably not going to be the absolute first edition, but it's in even better shape than my copy, which was the best looking copy I had ever seen. It's pretty obvious to me that this guy put them up on the library shelf and they just stayed there. Terrifying, but a great deal of his collection you can tell he bought much the same manner I do. Wouldn't it be nice to go on ahead and play that? Well, that never happens. This is the Morrow Project. Other than a price tag thing here, it's in almost perfect shape. And unlike my version, which is the 3rd printing, I do actually have an entire Morrow Project collection, literally everything that came out for it. But I don't have no 1st edition. And this is very clearly a 1st printing. And talk about another game that I always wished I could have played. But that's not all. I also threw in the personal and vehicular basic loads. That's how you did it back then. Your ammo would actually be tracked on there, and you would, as you fired each casing, you would actually mark it off. So, and this was before Twilight 2000. So I guess that's where record keeping, the gameplay came in. A damaged copy, it must be said, of MERP. So my copy of this is better. On the other hand, I'm obviously going to combine this copy with my own, because, Jesus, he's actually got the original dice in here. He's got an errata sheet. He's got some uncut tokens. This is it's a beautiful thing. It absolutely is. I'm glad that and keep in mind, this stuff was dug out from every corner. This was like an archaeological, there was no neat stack ready for me to do, but and am I glad I did it. Let's grab some of the, I think we're about halfway through now, but there's No idea what Merc is. It's from Fantasy Games Unlimited, FGU. They did a lot of games like Aftermath that I enjoyed. But this is a modern role-playing game of counterinsurgency, Merc. And it's got a pretty cool look about it, I think. That's for sure. It's yeah, and you can tell it's all unlike a lot of the earlier stuff. It's actually typeset properly and things like that. This is a pretty interesting. He's got some expansions for it, some you know, like Rhodesia and all that kind of crap. Oddly enough, it's usually expansions that are the hardest to find. They're usually the least printed, etc. Lots of people can always find a box set of a particular game, but it's when you come to those little expansions. Obviously, a man like that. In case I didn't mention it, a Army Ranger in Vietnam. I've seen the photographs of him in what do you call them, sandbagged emplacements and everything like that, and it's just like, wow, he doesn't have a shirt on. He looks right out of Platoon. But anyway, of course he's going to have Twilight 2000, obviously, and beautifully conditioned. Again, never seen it. I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking that he took a brief look at it and said, way too basic for my needs, because he was just that kind of guy, you know. I mean, it just makes you wonder why he was a grunt in Vietnam, because you know, in all ways, this is like a college professor kind of guy. If he wasn't so socially awkward, I suspect, you know. He also threw in the Free City of Krakow and the Pirates of the Vistula, which actually became Free League's new version. They actually, you know, made these. They expanded them into box sets, which is kind of cool. I think this one was urban operations, and this one has got like submarines and all that kind of stuff. But and you know, I have a copy of this, but what I don't have in there is all the original paperwork, the original character sheets, the beginning adventure. It's all in there, beefing my collection up and, you know, making me feel nifty and gaming loved and all that kind of crap. These, not only have I never heard of, like, I found Twilight Encounters online, you know, eBay copies. And the funny thing is, well, this is really weird. I'll go into it in a second, but, you know, I have no idea what Last Battle is. I mean, it's complete man-to-man, tank-to-tank board game for battles in World War III. So it's obviously like, you know, high-level vehicular combat and all that kind of crap. I mean, it lots of cool maps, and I would imagine you did play this, because even though all the counters are there, they're you know, they're punched. Wow, even the Games Workshop response card, believe that. But yeah, but having said that, I couldn't find any information. I went to roleplayinggeek.com and looked at product lists, and they weren't helping me out at all. Now, I suspect this came out right before the second edition, but you notice that it's got the second edition combat system. And I was like, oh, 10 adventures, 2 maps, and 200 markers. And I was like, well, this is pretty interesting. You know, there's you know, it literally is like modular adventures and stuff like that that go into it. And then they just ended up basically putting this in the second edition box set for the game that came out. So it's almost like, I suspect this was a trial run since it's 1989, and then they were like, it's so good we need to include it with the new deluxe box set. And speaking of the new deluxe box set, I literally can't believe the condition it's in, because I mean, what the hell? I don't think this has ever been read, even by somebody who cared for books. No, people keep telling me it's their favorite version of the game. Personally, I love the Free League one, but, you know, neither here nor there. I mean, as you can see, there's all that familiar. It even says Twilight Encounters on there. That's like the same maps and things like that. And of course, it's the deluxe edition with errata. Of course, with errata. That's how it was back in the day. If you were lucky, the errata would come in the box, and you didn't have to go to the pages of Dragon magazine or whatever to actually get it. But this thing's heavy, that's for sure. But that's not all. I don't know anything about Chivalry and Sorcery, only that there are still editions of it that are out today. But having said that, I don't know if Chivalry and Sorcery is still the same, but it was very obvious a miniatures game, without a doubt. This was, I believe this was less role-playing and more miniatures gaming. And as you can see, the text is so small. I mean, that's how things were back then, you know? And all of this stuff is first printing. I don't know what that means. This one's a little beat up anyway, but what do you got? 1977. And random issue of Ares magazine, which I used to love reading. But then the source book too, in very, very good condition, as well as the first source book for it, for Fantasy Games Unlimited. And even, I'm going to guess it's like the third supplement, Swords and Sorcerers. Kind of cool looking, but again, stuff that, what the hell am I going to do with it, right? I mean, I suppose I could put it up on a shelf. It might look kind of awesome, but... And briefly, what else? Oh yeah. And why not? I suspect somebody else, like he got rid of his Traveler stuff earlier, because you know, if he's into wargaming and stuff like that, well, of course he's going to have Traveler stuff. And, you know, nothing special here. It is a first printing, but, you know, I've given away copies of this. But still, you know, nice to see. And then I guess probably the most remarkable find, which we found in a drawer. I went on ahead and used my my dungeon, you know, what was this called? The Making of Original Dungeons and Dragons. That's the big coffee table book, to go on ahead and get most of the information. Because, well, what information did I get on certain products? Well, let's go on ahead and see. Pretty clearly got Dungeons and Dragons here, volume 3 of 3 booklets, volume 2, Monsters and Treasure, and volume 1. And you might notice that these, I don't know how they can be in this kind of shape. I really don't. The only thing I can think of is the drawer was closed 50 years ago. Now these are the third printings, because they never knew, you know, how many that they were going to go on ahead and make. The third print run was 2,250 copies. And the previous one, I mean, I think the first one was 500, I want to say, and then maybe 1,000. But it's still pretty nice to actually have something this connected to it. Oddly enough, and these did not come in the brown or the white box. These were issued on their own. I know that the fourth printing of, I want to say 5,000, probably wrong, but that actually, you know, came in a box, and then there was like the version that came in the other box. But these were on their own. But gorgeous. These are actually all first printings, and not that the print runs were not that much bigger either. What do we got here? We got. We'll ignore that. Dungeons and Dragons, here we go. And you can tell it's like the original because it says additional. That's what it, you know, that's what it says on there. And Greyhawk, I mean, that's literally where it came from. This was, you know, Gygax's first, I suppose this would be the first product that actually detailed it. Blackmore, of course, Dave Arneson. And also, this one actually has some writing on top of it. That's kind of a shame. But, you know, it is in pencil. I'm sure that there's, if somebody was really good at that kind of stuff, they could safely remove it. With the risque art and everything, there's the Eldritch Wizardry. You can tell it's already getting slick. There's a little color to it on the cover and everything like that. Kind of nifty. No idea what this is because I couldn't find it, and but it is by Gary Gygax, and it is fantastic miniature rules on a. Well, there you go, and it was also published the same year as Eldritch Wizardry. It's odd because it seems to replicate the which one? This one, yeah, Blackmore, where it's rules for fan. It seems to, but whatever. Who can go on ahead and tell? But a lot of fun, clearly, to go on ahead and find. Anyway, I'm sorry this went to 25 minutes. I hope any of you made it through. All right. You all have a good one.